Yeah, now stand and cheer for your Talking Basketball podcast. Welcome back to this episode. This is the second part of a doubleheader. If you haven't heard the first, go back and listen to it. If you can't be bothered, that's all right. Just keep listening to this one, and hopefully you enjoy it. And don't forget, like and subscribe. I hate it when people say that.
So, I mean, look, I could talk about my opinions on the BBL all night, but we also got to talk about BE as well, I think. Because what role do they play in terms of UK basketball, really? And hitting all these foundation levels, and what would be your take on that, Matt, in terms of, do you think there not necessarily needs to be a shake-up, but a different approach to how basketball is being administered at the grassroots level, should we say?
Yes, they've got such a difficult job, I think, Basketball England, because their hands are tied with certain things in terms of finance, and some of the funding that they get, the way that the UK operates in terms of its funding is so strange, and they have to tick certain boxes that actually don't necessarily marry up with what basketball in this country needs. And it feels like we're always spending our time and energy saying they ought to do this better, they ought to do that better, and there's no two ways about it. There definitely could be improvements. I think one of the bits that I've been heavily involved in is the way that they brought on the academy structure, and I think over the last 10-15 years that's been fantastic. And the EABL and the WEABL, talented players that's produced, but also you look even in the BBL, the coaches, the British coaches that are in there now. Mark Stoutel was running an ACE academy. Lloyd Gardner was running an ACE academy. Andreas was running an ACE. So it's also a good platform for developing coaches. We've got a girl that came through our DICE program. Sorry, I'm flipping between ACE and DICE because it's now called DICE, but girl that's on our program, Lauren, who was a DICE student, who's now got a job working with B as a photographer and a videographer. And so I think the stuff that they've done alongside the academies has been really good, and that's probably one of the areas that if I was Basketball England, I'd be looking at and saying, well, what did we do to move that on? In terms of where I'm sat with Div 1, it is about making it a more professional league, I think, and making it, if we're not going to have these teams like your Derbys and your Readings go into the BBL, can we make it more professional? And one of the reasons I want to see that is so we have more professional opportunities for the players. Like I said earlier, we're developing so many good players. Where are they going to play? And I honestly believe that if it's marketed well, people just want to see competitive basketball games that are well pieced together. It doesn't matter that much whether a game in Derby has got, a certain caliber of player or not. Is the game competitive? Is it well put together? And for us, we've seen when we've got local Derby kids as well, people want to come and watch it more. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure in terms of going back to the BE stuff, Mark. Just exactly, it feels like they are treading water a little bit, and since COVID,
we should get them on the show.
But it's funny though, isn't it? Because you've said we've seen it with the Force, and you've seen it at Derby, where that influx after COVID, the amount of juniors that are coming in now, it's a case of. You were saying Paul's been trying to get me to try and do some coaching and go do my coaching stuff, because it's like we've got too many.
Some of the kids
we've got too many people. There's almost
we got some good kids.
Instead of culling like for the under 14s team, there's 20 people turning up. We've got to get rid of a few. It's like there's 35, and you go, damn, we're getting rid of more people than are going to be on the team.
Yeah,
and that wasn't a problem even like the year, but just every year there's more and more coming.
Can I just say, just to agree with something that Matt said, is I think as far, just going back a little bit, which was as far as the BBL and that exposure, just something like this podcast.
Yep.
How many messages and emails do we get all the time where it sounds like just little things of now, like, did you watch the BBL game where, you know, London took on the thing? And it's like, we're getting an influx, so much influx of that just because of the podcast and stuff like that, which is great. I also agree with what Matt was saying about the actual package.
Yep.
And we have definitely got an example in Portsmouth. Look, Matt, we're Div 3. Okay, so and look, you can tell by my tone how I'm saying it, we're Div 3. However, we got 450 people turning up to every home game, and it's great to see the away team's face. It's one of my favourite parts of the Saturday. Watch the away team when they come in and they see the bleachers out and they're like, "This is Div 3. We normally play in front of 10 people."
It's like
we got
mum and dad and my
people,
girlfriend there or something.
450 people standing here, sat here, and it's going to be loud, and it's going to be I don't want to say an aggressive environment,
No, it's an experience.
hostile environment, not hostile, everyone's not, no one's cheering for you, basically.
Energetic experience.
But we've accomplished that purely by the entertainment side of it. So we're talking, I mean, I've seen it on some of the things where you've got music and all of that, but where we really ramped up is we completely copy the American model, where we've got, you know, all the in-jingle sounds. We basically take the NBA, which is a great example of how to entertain someone, and we just do all the game sounds.
Atmosphere.
I would easily say we've got more NBA sounds than anyone else in the UK. Easily.
Mm-hmm.
I've got about 50 on a board, and as the game's going, it'll be like dun, 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 dun.
Yep.
Makes a difference though, doesn't it?
It makes a difference. And you know what? It's great to have that influence. The game always starts and I press a button and it goes, "Everybody clap your hands." 400 people start clapping immediately.
Yep.
Get everyone going. And I just think I will give that away if anyone wants it. I give it away. But if everyone had that, well, now we can do that in Div 3.
Yeah.
And you do that all the way up. Well, hang on, that's 450
Make
per
it an
team.
experience.
Yeah.
Make it an experience.
But we do have the venue to do that.
Well,
venue's important, but I think you're right.
It's educating. It goes back to what you said earlier, Matt. It's the people who are in the local areas. You know, everyone needs the community, but if you don't know that game is happening, if you don't know competitive sport is actually occurring, and you don't know you're going to go there, and even if you're just, I won't say a casual viewer, but you think, "Oh, what's this about? I'm going to turn up." If you go there and have a good experience, you're going to go again.
I would relish an opportunity to do what I do at the NBL Div 3 for a BBL or an NBL Div 1, because people would sit there and go, crap, I get it. Straight away they get it. And when we first game, we had 50 people, and then it went 50, 100, 200, 350, 450.
It went even quicker than that. It was
Well, I was going to say, Paul, I think that's it. Not many people come to basketball games and don't enjoy it. You know, very seldom do any of, you know, the junior kids, or when we go and do assemblies and kids come in, very seldom do you see someone, you know, occasionally you might have a blowout game or whatever. But if it's a close game and you're, you know, doing all the entertainment stuff like it's a baseball game in the States, where every time the clock stops, something's going on, there's something for the kids to be engaged in. They come back, they want to watch it again. And I honestly don't think it's that much about the level of players. I think it's about, you know, how competitive is the game, how exciting is it. So that fan engagement's used. Now come up to Derby, Paul, and you can that'd be good to
do one. I'd do that.
I'd be careful of that, Matt. He'll take you up on it. Well, he'll be out on that.
I'm not going to go into any detail. I'm not going to go into any detail on this, because I might do it another time if they're happy for me to say it. But I'm actually talking to a BBL club at the moment to help with the sound, and so that is, for me, is a huge look, we're doing something right in Div 3 if a BBL club are now talking to us about our in-game setups.
But it's about the organisation, because the way in which you approached it, doing the entertainment, and the structure that has been put in place in Portsmouth Force, we operate more like a Division 2 club,
it's a
Division 1 club. We operate like a proper club with a proper foundation.
The day is a Div 1.
Exactly.
Easily Div 1 day.
Part of it's the criteria, though, as well, that Basketball England, I mean, back 15 years, maybe more, when I first was at Mansfield and they were in Division 2, got promoted from Division 3 to Division 2, the criteria was you had to, in Division 2, you had to have 250 fixed seats. And now there's a couple of teams in Division 1 that don't have that.
Yeah.
And part of it's just enforcing some of that criteria to say, no, this is National League. And I think what's happened over the last, and it's a double-edged sword. What on one side, they've done a phenomenal job of increasing participation in terms of the amount of National League teams there is. But on the other side, the standards have just dropped. It's much more participation-led at Division 3, what now will be Division 4 next season, or whatever they're going to call it, as opposed to actually, no, it's National League. And I think, again, going back 20 years, there wasn't as many National League teams, but the local league teams were much more vibrant. That's where your Division 3 and Division 4 players played, and National League was much more about being a showcase, being something that people would go and watch. And I guess the other thing is there's a lot of, and I don't have an answer to this, but there's a lot of feeder teams. You know, we've got a Division 3 team that, you know, in addition to a Division 1 team. And when it's your second team, you're not going to have the people that are following it as much as you are when Portsmouth have got their first team playing in Division 3, I suppose.
Yeah. In fairness to Derby, I actually like their social media stuff.
Yeah,
so their
really
social
great.
media stuff is actually better than a lot that I've seen, because it's quite consistent. That's what I like about it. And like the actual imaging and stuff like that, that's always done very well.
I mean,
no, we've got some great guys and girls behind the scenes, and they've pushed that on over the last couple of years. Some really fun volunteers, and they're learning and playing with stuff. And they've started doing a podcast this year as well, which has been really well received. And it's just a change of mindset. I mean, I'm a dinosaur really when it comes to all that social media stuff and things like that. But unfortunately, that's what you need to do if you want to push things forward. You need to find different ways to engage with people.
Yeah. Well, you know what? My brother's got a local league basketball team in Portsmouth called the Portsmouth Fury, and it's really funny because he is very good on social media with the Instagram and stuff like that. And I hear kids in the like playing basketball and like, oh, I want to play for the Portsmouth Fury, and I'm like, how do you even know about that? Like, but it's all the social media stuff.
That's awesome.
It's like, hang on, do you know they're a local league team? They're not a national league team, like. But I do think that learning curve that you're talking about, I do think that needs to extend into into BE. And they need
100%.
to be a flexible. Little example I can give you of that is referees. I do think when you speak to a referee and they turn up with the circus that we have, there is no rule to say what I can play, what music I can play. Other than the mic, I can't say anything derogatory, but I can say what I want to get all the crowd going.
Of course.
So a bit like that. No,
It's called home court advantage.
However, it probably took me a season to get the referees to a learning experience, whereas I would. I tell you
There's
what.
a level of education that needs to go, and it's two-way. It's not just, because at the same time, you have to educate the fans. This is the point you shout defense. This is the point you cheer. If you're trying to educate people to bring them into the game, sometimes they don't know that necessarily. And, even if it's family friendly, you still got to educate that. But that goes with the refs. That goes with all the other staff.
So, and this is something I'm talking about. I'm going to give you an example now, Matt. If a referee takes more than 5 seconds to work out what he's doing in a game, I will go straight into this. and I'll be like, the referees are in deep discussion here. Let's see if it's going to go Portsmouth ball way or something like that. But the first thing,
they're not a fan of that.
No, they hate it. But it's like, well, it's got nothing to do with you. I'm not having a go at you. You're just having your chat, and I'm entertaining 450 people. So they're not sat there in silence watching you two talk.
That's why all the people laugh when you play that music, and that's what the rest say.
But that's an example. But that's been a learning experience, because it's like, I'm not having a go. I'm entertaining people whilst you talk.
The guy at Reading, I know he got in trouble with the referees a couple of times this year. I forgot his name, but he does a really good job of hyping their crowd up. And I think he got himself, he was telling me he's been warned a few times for, been derogatory to the refs and bits and pieces. But like you say, it's home court advantage, and it cheeses you off when you're there as the opposition coach. But the way that he gets the crowd going, it adds to the entertainment. Every time we've been there, it's been packed, and that's what we need. I don't like those home courts that put the speakers, just turning them slightly so they're right in the timeout with me. Thames Valley do that a little bit. So
well, you know
that's
what?
A great idea. We'll use that one.
Yeah,
I have used that. But I mean, what I tend to do now is, well, we've moved to speakers so they're on the other side with the players, but that is very difficult if you've got the crowd and the players. I think Derby is a really bad example, good example for this, because you would have to put the speakers on the side where the players are to do what we do. But that is difficult because that's just sound management. But this is the one I'm struggling with at the moment, Matt. I'll play this one for you. So this is when a referee makes, and I think this is home court advantage. If the referee, we only play this once a game, but if a referee makes what we would call a bad call, we don't say anything, but as we do this. There we go. That's a personal foul on Portsmouth Force Ollie Blake. That's his fourth personal foul. But again, that's what you get in the NBA.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's entertainment, isn't it? And it's getting that balance right, isn't it, between realising to grow the game, the people watching have got to be entertained. Yeah,
I think there's definitely something in that. Right, we've tailed off now.
That's great. So, I mean, look, let's bring it back to Derby and you with your coaching. We're talking about these juniors now. What sort of methods are you using, like when you're developing players? Are you looking at them just skill based? Are you looking at like their attitudes? What is it that you're looking for in your players?
I think you're trying to not just make them better basketball players, definitely make them better people because of the age. Particularly, I'm assuming you're talking about the academy guys. So we're trying to develop them in terms of the technical stuff, the tactical stuff. Making sure they understand the kind of psychology of the game and all those different bits, and also kind of getting them now. I think there's a massive shift where, the physique of the player is huge. So actually making sure that they understand how important strength training is and looking after their body and all bits and pieces like that, I suppose. But then also just for me, maintaining motivation's been really big, just making sure it's still enjoyable, it's still good fun whilst you're going through this, all these different elements of basketball, making sure they still want to play basketball because they love it. And I think at that age group, we have a lot of our players that start off playing because they love it, and then the mindset shifts a little bit to thinking, I want to be a pro basketball player, and then that's when we have a little bit of a collision, I suppose, in terms of, where they started and where they are now, and it's not healthy for a lot of these guys. So trying to make sure that, I think for our players at that age, they've still got to love it, and if they're good enough, I still want them to love. You don't want someone to be a professional basketball player and treating it like as if they were working in a factory and hate going to work and not enjoying it. So the dream is for them to become pro basketball players, but still still been passionate about it and still doing it because they love it. And not sure I answered the question.
No, you did. I mean, I was going to say, like, it sounds like being passionate for it is really one of your core principles in terms of, or your philosophies rather, for coaching. But do you have like a set of principles that you put on the team itself?
Yeah, he does.
That's a loaded question because I know Paul's already told me some.
Paul's been on top of it, and Paul's seen a little bit of it before he got injured. And I think there's working with the GB over 40s has been a little bit different because the kind of goals of those guys is obviously different. So each team and each age group that you're working on, I suppose it's just working out what's going to motivate that group of guys and what's going to be beneficial for them, I suppose. And certainly some of the stuff and way that I would speak to and treat our Div 1 players will be a little bit different from the way that I would treat our academy guys. And even within the squad, as a coach, I think you're constantly trying to work out how you can get the best out of certain players. So, treating everyone the same, but, isn't actually, I think there's a quote, something like treating everyone equal doesn't mean you're treating everyone fairly. And we'll try to, I'm not sure I got that quote quite right, but the idea, you might understand that I'm going to treat Malcolm Smith a little bit different than I'm going to treat Elliot Lawrence, who's one of our up and coming players, and working out what ticks his box, and working with the GB over 40s guys, realizing that for some of those guys, their goals are totally different from a pro player. They're at a totally different stage in their life. This is their release. They're just, they only get to play a couple of times a month, and when they're in, they're all fully invested. And it's way different to working with guys every single day and trying to find different ways to motivate them, I suppose.
I think the quote is, I could be wrong, it's you got to treat people differently so they can achieve the same thing. Is that the quote you were going to say?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
Yeah.
And I've seen that a lot. And the more you uncover, particularly with our academy guys, where you're kind of looking at the psychology, a way to motivate one person is just not going to work on another person. And you're constantly just trying to work out, how can I get the best out of this player? And, some players been yelled at, they deal brilliantly with that. Some players, you're yelling at them, and it's quite hard as a coach, because sometimes you want to yell at someone, but that
they'll break
and it's not going to be productive. But
yeah.
I can't help myself. The guy deserves to be yelled at.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting, I suppose.
That's funny. You literally have just answered the next question, which was how you manage emotional and psychological aspects of the game. Because being a coach, you're seeing the game differently to how they see it and how they're playing it. It's that balance, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It really is. And I think I've probably evolved a little bit as a coach as I've gone along, and I think you get a bit more understanding of what the players. One of the big advantages I suppose I've had of playing at a decent level is kind of understanding how a player's feeling after a loss, or understanding when they've not done very well, how they're feeling. And we've had players that have been tossed out a game and acted silly or whatever, and probably expected me to come in and go berserk at them. But actually sometimes it's about understanding what they're going through off the court, on the court. And I think I've got a pretty good balance of that, of kind of knowing when someone turns up to practice, what sort of mood they're in. Are they frustrated with the weekend's result, and things like that? And I suppose some of that you just get from experience, and some of it you get from being around players. There's always a couple of players that you can't work out their psyche totally, but on the whole, that's I think a lot of coaching, actually working out how you can actually get the best out of a certain player.
Yeah. And I mean, just to ask you, how did the FIBA GB head coach opportunity come up? How did that happen?
If I'm totally honest, Paul, what happened was I just kept on getting harassed to do it. And eventually I broke and sort of said, well, look, if we can make most of the training sessions in the Midlands, I'm pretty busy. But if most of the training sessions can be in the Midlands, if I don't have to do any of the administration because A, I don't have time, and B, it's not really one of my strengths, then yeah, I'll give it a go. And really enjoyed it, particularly working with some of the guys that I played with, and you know, Simon Spencer and Mark Woodhouse, Gaz Collins. One of the things that really shook me up a little bit was when someone said, well, we'll ask Ben Coy to play. And I said, well, Ben can't be 40. And he's like, yeah, Ben's 40. And he was one of the kids that was on the academy at Mansfield when I came back to the States, came back from the States in 2003. So that was when I realized, man, I've been doing it a while and pretty old. So yeah, they just bullied me into it, I think is the answer, Paul. But I'm really looking forward to it. I've enjoyed it. It's a really good group of guys. Going to be interesting to see how we get on in Italy. You know, we've missed having yourself. There's been, you know, interestingly different, you know, a few different people that, well, I can't do it because of work commitments or family commitments, and so it's different people's commitments are really impacting them. And again, that's again trying to work out the psychology of the different players, even on that team. Like, what, you know, Simon Spencer, who I played with, so I know what makes him click, and I, as a coach, I can just, you know, put him on a weaker team or not call a foul for him in practice and know that it's just going to get him motivated. Whereas a couple of other guys you do that to, they just don't get it and they're just like, this is horse crap, and just walk off. Or, you know, so you just kind of working out what makes them tick. But yeah, we'll see. But I've been enjoying it so far. We'll see how we get on in Italy.
I mean, that's only, I want to say, how what, 3 weeks away are we?
Yeah, it's
no,
it's the
3 weeks.
20th of June, so 3 weeks on 3 weeks tomorrow, is it?
Yeah.
So,
and the group stage has been called, so Italy is in the group as well. Again,
I'm a little bit blind to all this, and probably a good thing, so I'm not getting too worried about it. But everyone's telling me that Italy were one of the teams, and we've got Spain in our group who have, you know, were pretty sensational as well. So it's going to be an interesting one, that's for sure. And I think there's a bit of a mix of teams, a few teams that are got full of, you know, former pros that really are taking it serious, and a few teams that perhaps aren't quite as serious and doing it much more as an enjoyable experience, perhaps. I don't know. So we'll see how we get on.
Well, we'll definitely have someone from the team come back, and when you guys come back, so we can hear what the experience was like. And
it's always
the games and
very interesting when we've spoken about this with the international play, how a lot of people have always said the one thing that stands out with all the international teams, like the Italians, is a lot of them play in their own leagues together at the top tier level. So they all, even though there might be rivals during those games, when they go and play their own team, they're all at that certain level. They all kind of have that rhythm. Whereas because of what we've been talking about within the UK, a lot of the UK players can play all over the place and play at different levels and different things. So the cohesiveness for a coach must be quite a big challenge in comparison to some of those, like say some of those teams, they all play together.
Once
a week practice, so once a month practice makes it tough, but that's just the reality. If we were doing any more than that, then, you know, players that have got kids and families that are, you know, having other commitments, at least this works for them in the sense that they can sort of say, this is my one day a month that I'm going to be in Nottingham on a Sunday, or in Derby on a Saturday. So but yeah, I think we are missing out in terms of some teams, by the sounds of it, do play together all year round.
But that's going to be cool, though, isn't it? You're going to go cool. in the arena or stadium, go out there with all the other countries, with the Union Jack, and then it's going to be playing against other countries, swimming pool, sun. Can't ask for more.
Can't grumble too much, can we? Really?
No.
Well, I mean, life could be worse. And you know what I like about it is the amount of places that I've been to, where someone says, "Have you ever been to Southampton?" Like, yeah, I've been 10 times. Oh, what's it like? No idea. I've just seen like Solent University, and I've just whereas I feel like 9 days in Italy. We might even get to see a little bit of the sun and the beach and everything else as well. So yeah, it will be pretty cool.
Are those players on a no beer diet?
On a leash.
I won't be installing that, but our captain Mark Woodhouse, I let him do the installing of that, which is a little different from our Derby Div 1 team, because our captain Malcolm Smith wouldn't be enforcing the no beer diet, that's for sure. He's not afraid of a couple of ales, but it's getting that balance into it. You're representing your country, you want to do as well as possible, but it's also getting a bit of balance between making sure people have a good time, you're enjoying it. Like I was saying before, now I don't think you necessarily have to have a beer to enjoy life, that's for sure, but I'm not going to be, obviously if someone's turning up with a Gatorade bottle and that's got beer in it, that might be a bit of a problem. So but I'm anticipating there could be a couple of beers consumed.
Apparently, was it Switzerland do the best parties?
Apparently so, yeah.
Yeah, the Swiss. They're the ones to look out for.
That's who I've got to look out for. There you go. Appreciate that. Oh, that's who I've got to keep the guys away from until the later stages.
Well, apparently their parties are like legendary.
Yeah,
yeah, renowned. Like every other country is trying to get into the Switzerland party.
Ironically, the home of FIBA throw the best parties. Who knew?
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, I mean, look, we can't mention the fact that you've been so tenured at Derby, and obviously leaving for pastures anew. Do you have any plans to do any coaching over in the States?
Honestly, not too sure at the moment, Mark. Definitely something that I'd probably like to do. Won't get my visa until sometime around September, October, and not planning on moving there until January. So it would be a case of getting something for 2025. Part of me really is excited about the prospect of coaching the States, and something that I think would be fantastic to do, and also would be kind of fun to be in a different environment where perhaps sports taken a little bit more seriously. There's, like we've spoke about earlier, the facilities and things like that are a little bit better. Another part of me also thinks, maybe just get a normal job and actually just, when someone says I'm going to come to the States to visit you, you're not saying like you are all the time as a basketball coach, like, oh right, well I'm up in Newcastle on the Saturday, but I could probably do lunch on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
So I don't know, to be honest. Keeping it open.
You did say you're going Dakota way, which is not that far from Minnesota, and I believe a Mr. Chris Finch is reasonably well respected in Timberwolves at the moment, isn't he? Yeah, that
would be well. He's done a great job this season, to be fair. That's for sure. And always funny in the playoffs. I guess it's similar in this country that everyone finishes the season with a loss, apart from the winning team, and that's kind of cool about basketball. Unless you've had that bad a season, you don't make the playoffs. But he's done great. That would be good. Yeah, that's the closest NBA town to probably where I'm going to be located. So that would be the dream. That's for sure.
Well, he's got some British basketball roots, hasn't he? That's for sure. So, obviously you mentioned Nick Nurse as well. I think a commute to Philly might be out of the question, but
little bit of a stretch. But to be honest as well, if I were lucky enough to get a job there, I've got a feeling that we might just decide we'll live in Philadelphia rather than North Dakota. But I've joked a few times that when my wife found out that Nick Nurse was a Derby coach and is now coaching in the NBA, she just thinks that's the natural progression for me. So I'm hoping
she's like, he's going to be an NBA coach in a few years. She'll be fine.
That's it. I think Matt's given us a hint of what the future holds for him. We're going to see him up there next to Joel Embiid, and we were like, hang on a minute, what? Hang on, who's is he assistant coach there? What's he doing?
Last time I was in the States, guys, I must have been stopped about 7 or 8 times with people thinking I was Steve Kerr. So I might just go as a Steve Kerr double and try and do a few talks or something.
Just
like
say
that.
Yes. Are you Steve Kerr? Yes. Yes, I am. In a
The
British
problem
accent.
is, yeah, it's just the accent, but yeah.
I am who you think I am.
But my wife did get me a Golden State hoodie for Christmas. So I'm ready to really go on my full Steve Kerr attack. Really.
Lean into it, Matt. Just, you don't have to say I am Steve Kerr. They'll just give you a double look and you go, I am him.
Just walk onto the team bus, see if anyone says anything.
Just say, yes, it's me. And then that's what they're not going to ask any questions. Yes, it's me.
Clay Thompson did that. Sorry, a Clay Thompson double did that a few years ago.
Yeah, he did
all the way in, didn't they? So maybe I'll try that.
The only thing is, like, when I saw that, how stupid do you have to be that Clay Thompson's turning up to the game in full kit, walking through the car park into the stadium, like, yeah, sure, and you go. It's like, how are you just falling for that?
He's never done that ever, but sure, let him go for that. But
let him through,
I mean, you touched on it earlier, but just to, I want to say, round that up, in the States, obviously, the game is different. It is a different sort of game. So how as a coach, if you were going into that, how would you prepare for that or approach that, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, no, there's quite a few little differences. I think you have even more control in sense of timeouts, more timeouts, ability to call timeouts during the play, which would be a big change and a big adjustment. I think the biggest one for me probably is the shot clock in college basketball and high school basketball in the States is 30 seconds or more, and then offensive rebounds, resetting it and having another 20 seconds or whatever to run your offense again. So in terms of your playbook, you're able to do things that last a little bit longer or look at things a little bit differently. And then just other little subtle changes, like you're not allowed to tap the ball off the back, off the rim when it's in the cylinder like you are in FIBA and stuff like that, and throwing the ball in the backcourt on out of bounds and bits and pieces like that. But on the whole, I think basketball is basketball, and a lot of the ideas and a lot of the philosophies that I've taken from the States, and you just adapt them a little bit, and it'll be a similar case again going back the other way. Just lots of parts of it are just exciting, as from a coach's point of view, to have 30 seconds to actually run an offense as opposed to 24 is a massive amount of time. And I feel like in some ways over there the coach can influence the game even more. And one of the cool things about basketball on the whole is during the game coaches can influence it probably more than most other sports. Maybe not as much as maybe American football, but aside from that, the ability to have timeouts and actually genuinely impact the game isn't something that you see in rugby or football or a lot of other sports over here.
I don't know why when Matt said that, it was definitely not the image he was trying to portray, but I just thought of New Jersey point guard who turned coach.
Jason Kidd.
Do you know what I was like? When he goes, bump me, and he had the drink so he could get a timeout.
Throwing water, and I'm all over that sort of stuff. Some people would call that cheating, Mark. I love that sort of stuff. I remember a game in Mansfield once. We had a timeout, and there were two doors, one near our bench and one near their bench. And I sent one of my players out the door, and then he walked down the corridor and entered the court down at the other door. And as everyone came back on the court, I told him not to come on the court until the ref gave us the ball. So he came through the door and no one was guarding him, and we threw the ball down the floor for a layup, and they're all going berserk like he's just come through that door. But the refs at that level didn't quite clock it. So any marginal gain or edge that you can find like that the refs don't spot, I think is fair game.
Yeah,
a win is a win.
win is
I
a
mean,
win.
look,
Absolutely.
you've mentioned. Do you support an NBA team, by the way?
Not really. I mean, Indiana Pacers was always my team, and that was mainly because I played against Jamal Tinsley in college in California, and
cool.
he then went on to play for them. So, and I loved Reggie Miller, so they were kind of were my team. Now I've been following Toronto and Philadelphia, I suppose, because of Nick. But if I'm totally honest, I watch more college basketball probably than NBA. I watch the NBA playoffs, enjoy the playoffs, but my NBA sort of and you also just get so consumed with the leagues that you're coaching in. So just, you know, I've watched so many Division 1 games this season and EABL games and stuff that you're coaching in, that how much time is there in the day to then go and watch too many NBA games.
Yeah.
Do you get lots of film time for Division 1?
Yeah, we don't spend a lot of time in terms of watching the film with the guys.
Okay.
What we've done the last couple of years is put together the film and we send it out to them, just because of time at practice, and then ability to go in a classroom is not very easy. And this year we have Rob Marsden was traveling down from Doncaster, Corey was traveling from Manchester, and so to be able to get them in a classroom, not as much as we'd like. But we, my assistant coach, had two really great assistant coaches, but Jake Brown spent a lot of time putting together our scout. We had really good scouts on the opposition, made a massive difference.
I just love the idea potentially of Matt commentating on one of the videos that he's sending out. Like, look, fellas, this is where you screwed up. You need to do this.
And it's a good balance, to be honest. When I do video sessions with the academy guys, and Jake's done a lot of them this year, but I remember after a college game in the States, and this was back in the day when, we didn't have the facilities that we've got now in terms of video, but watching it and me and my teammate counting the score, and we'd won this game by 6 or 8 points. And at the end of the video session, we were just counting how many points they scored and how many points we scored in the video session. And we lost like 102 to 2. So since then, I've always tried to get a bit of a balance where it's not just all the negative. You're trying to make sure that the players see some positives and they're not coming out or coming into a video session just so down on it. I remember the coach rewinding the video about 7 times after I'd just given up a layup, and him saying something like, "God damn it, you came all the way from fucking England and that's all you can show me." But again, it sticks with you. So I guess what he was doing was great. It worked, but they're the bits I suppose you remember as a player. But trying to get the balance definitely in the videos between, yes, you've got to show people when they're not doing things well, but at the same time getting a bit of a balance and making sure you show some of the positives as well.
Well, that for some reason in my head, as you're talking about that with getting balance and trying to keep positives, the thing that sticks in my head is Paul's particular beef with the 30 points. When you rule, I should say, if you're decimating another team and they're like the juniors.
I mean, NBL Div 1, you need 2, 3. Like when you're old, you need to deal with that. Yeah, the junior setup is
a different thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
exactly. But when you're in those academies, and
it's basically so you don't get 100-point blowouts, is what he's.
I've seen that. I think was it Spain where the scoreboard goes off once a team gets 30 points up. I think they turn the scoreboard off.
Oh right, that's a good way of doing it.
Yeah, make it irrelevant because
it becomes you just stop watch and keep the score, but there's no need for the kids to be looking at it, and I think that's a good idea.
That's a great idea.
Simple, isn't it? Just because then they stop doing it, but obviously you have the points difference, and that was part of the problem, wasn't it? That
that's why we were saying maybe just give them 30.
Just give them a 30. Doesn't matter what you win by. It's 30. Yeah. That's it, and that makes a difference.
Matt, I just got to round this up by Like, you came back from the States and you won the NBL Div 1 as a player for Derby, and now you've become coach and you've won NBL Div 1 as a coach. That feels like a nice, I might maybe say the word, like a nice romantic way to end your time with Derby.
It's worked out pretty cool in that respect. I don't think that was I suppose in some ways it was the plan. Spoke a little bit this. I kind of knew that this was going to be my last season, I suppose, in the summer. So it has been cool, but certainly every year you just put together the best possible team that you can, I suppose, with the resources you've got, and you're always looking to finish as high as possible. And nothing was too different this year, apart from when I looked at the team that we've been able to put together. I felt that we should win the league. I thought we had the best team on paper, and there's some other really good teams in the league. And it was my job to make sure that we managed to achieve that, and we did. So that was it was a really good way to finish, I suppose. But that's in 3 or 4 years' time, people will perhaps have forgotten a little bit about the Division 1 title win, but hopefully in 3 or 4 years' time, some of the foundations, some of the kids that are coming through the club will be moving on to bigger and better things, and the club will hopefully be keeping on growing. And that's hopefully more of the legacy that I've helped leave a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're right there as well, because Derby have got one of the strongest academies, I think, maybe for a decade in the UK.
I'd say so. I mean, we've always, there's some other really good academies. So certainly Barking Abbey and, the Itchen Academy in the south, and Charnwood and Myerscough up in the north. But yeah, we've been really consistent over a decade for sure. We've been, one of the top academies, produced some really good players, and I'm confident that that's in a position where that will continue, and the junior programs just continue to grow and grow. So yeah, I'm really, really pleased with all of that.
And hopefully I'm not about to stitch you up here, because I know you've listened to some of the podcasts. I usually try to give our like to give our guests a heads up of how it ends, so I'm sure you know what's coming. But I forgot to do it at the start to remind you. So go on, Mark. Got your questions.
As a coach, he gets the extra question.
Yes,
as well,
he does.
doesn't he?
As coach,
that's correct. Yeah.
Question.
So the first question is always, you get an inbounded pass or whatever it may be. You've got that one person, one player who's going to do the clutch shot. Who does it go to? And it could be any player. It can be someone you've coached, someone you've seen, a famous player, anyone. Who's that clutch shot?
Any player, I'm going to give it to Reggie Miller.
Reggie.
Yeah, I give that to Reggie Miller, I think.
Yeah, it's a good clutch play, that is, no question. And then we go to our 5 and Pine, which can be your top 5 players, and you've got one on the bench. And because you are a coach, you have to choose who that would be the coach as well. So it's almost like your favourite 5 or your favourite starting 5.
Oh, wow. So this is, you're looking for, famous players, NBA players, that sort of stuff.
No, whoever you want. It can be people you've played with. It could be yourself. It could be BBL, NBL, or NBA. Whatever you want.
Wow, cool question.
But they're playing for the fate of humanity.
But you've got those 5, and you've got that one on the bench as well.
I'm pretty confident that I would change this in an hour's time once I've given it more thought. But let me go with Ernest Lee, who was a Derby American in the 89, 90 and 1991 season, played with Nick Nurse, who was sensational, from San Francisco. He actually killed himself in the mid 90s, unfortunately, but he was the best American that I ever saw at Derby. He had a 58-point game once. So if you look back in the archives for I think he averaged 35 points in the season, in one of the 2 seasons in the BBL. So he's in there. I'm going to put next to him at the guard my old teammate and who's playing on the Masters, the GB team, Simon Spencer.
Spence.
He's my boy, and I just love his competitive edge, and he's really good. So him, those two.
You know what? It's only when you said that you know him inside out that it clicks. So sometimes he'd be getting hammered, and I'd be thinking, man, that's not calling that foul. Like, that was definitely a foul. And then it was getting hit harder and harder. And then he was getting more and more wound up, more and more competitive. It all makes sense now. You're sitting there going, yeah, I got a master plan. Come on, Speds.
Oh, I know full well if someone came in and hammered you obviously you getting injured, like I would just leave that. I wouldn't even call it because I know that would absolutely infuriate me.
And some guys are like that. And some guys, once, Malcolm Smith can be a little bit like that, if the referee don't give him a call, part of me is annoyed, but part of me is thinking, yeah, okay, he's gonna get going again.
You got to let the donkey see the carrot sometimes. They don't like that.
I love that now. I'm looking back at those interactions going, wow, I'm looking at that so differently now.
So that's two.
I'm going to put in Josh Woodhibbert, who's playing now up in Newcastle. He's the best junior that I coached, I think. Just absolute machine, competitive. If he hadn't played tennis for 5 years, from sort of 17 to 22 or whatever, and didn't play any basketball, I think he'd be the best player in the UK right now. I mean, he's still pretty damn good, but that 5 years where he just focused, and can't blame him for that. He was a phenomenal tennis player as well, but he just had a different mindset to most of the players that I've coached. Just the way that he conducted himself. So there's.
Did you show him the championship ring? Just say, I won a tennis championship once.
He saw
just
that
to
ring.
really throw him.
I wouldn't dare, because that's just embarrassing me, Josh. His brother is a really cool guy as well, and he plays a bit of tennis. I feel like I might be able to take his brother on, but Josh is in a league. He could probably beat me with his left hand, I think. So I need a big man. So
I like that you're thinking strategically as well, because they've all got to play together.
I'll go with Trevor Gordon for my big man. Don't know if you guys can remember him. He had half a season in Derby, and then he got kicked off the team because he was just a bit crazy. But he was one of the best big players that I'd ever seen. And again, like I said, I might change my mind once I've had a bit more time to think about it. But he was on another level. Who would be the last guy? I'll change it later, but I guess I better. The two guys that spring to mind would be either Clarence Wiggins or Tim Lascelles. So Clarence was the first American to ever come to Derby, and just made everyone better, and obviously coached me and was awesome. So I'll probably bring Clarence off the bench because he was such a good guy. He wouldn't mind coming off the bench. And then I put Tim Lascelles, who has missed the Derby basketball through the 90s. I think someone told me recently, I think he's still like number 2 or 3 in all-time 3 points made in the BBL or something crazy. So that's his son plays he's the captain of Newcastle United. I don't know how well you guys follow any football or anything like that, but he was a great, again, for me as a youngster, just someone to look up to, and great role model. And so yeah, that would probably be my group. But I'm sure in a couple of hours time I'd want to call you up and change my team.
Wow, so you didn't even put Reggie in your top 5. That's impressive.
No, if I was just going NBA players, Reggie and Jason Kidd would probably make the cut, I think, to be honest. You're
going to land that plane. Reggie's going to be at the airport just going somewhere else, and you'll be like, hey, you didn't put me in the top 5.
So coach, who gets to coach these guys? Who's your favourite coach?
Had some really good coaches. So had some really good coaches. So if it's someone that coached me, wow, it's tough because Clarence was a great coach. I had Chris Squire, who was a really good junior coach. Andy Mayer coached me as a junior. I had in 4 or 5 seasons in America, I had 4 different coaches, so some really good coaches over there as well.
Was it Jim Feeney your last coach?
Jim Feeney was my last coach, and I'm still in contact with him quite a lot, actually. In fact, Jim Feeney was the coach who told me I ought to sign Sam Maston this year. He was the one that had watched. He still watches quite a bit of Northern Sun stuff. He's a bit crazy though, so I don't know how Spencer would deal with Feeney in his face. So I'm going to go with Clarence. But again, there's loads of great coaches that I've had the pleasure of playing under, and for me as a coach, just trying to take a little bit from different coaches and work out, actually this coach is really good at that. Chris Squire was really good at some things, and I think, like I said to you earlier, Paul, I think any drill or anything that you do, you've stolen off someone for the most part. I guess probably the best one would have been to pick Nick Nurse, but that's too obvious. I'd love someone to go back into the stats the year that Nick Nurse coached Derby and to see how many 3-point shots were taken, because I think they had Terry Mangum, who was 6'5", and the rest of the team were all guards. So it was like in that year, it was like watching the 2017 Golden State team where they were just gunning threes up. It was like 30 years ahead of the time almost. I don't know whether that was just because Nick only recruited guards or whether he was just that far ahead of his time. He knew that was the way the game was going to go.
One of the hardest things that we find with having guests is going back through history to look for records, because now we're spoilt by the amount of data that you can find about all modern players and stats. How many turnovers led to an offensive point? You can pick that up in a second. But as soon as you go past late 90s,
get to the 80s,
and then
early 90s maybe,
it starts getting really misty about trying to pick out specifics. And unless someone's got an archive or just happen to be a fan and write stuff, it's I won't say they get lost in the winds of time, which is such a great shame.
I spent a lot of time on Dave Owen's website when you're recruiting players and looking at stuff, and I noticed that some of my former teammates were on there. So I put my name in and I wasn't on there, Mark. So I messaged Dave and said, like, how come I'm not on there? And he then sent me the stats for the year that we won the league. And I was like, yeah, leave me off there. I forgot how many turnovers that I had that season. Yeah, I think it's
really?
Was he doing you a favour?
How many turnovers was it? Come on.
Yeah, it was like 4 a game. Like I was up there, I was just throwing. It turns out in my head, I was just throwing assists to Spencer and Atwell and Joel Midori, and turns out I was throwing it out of bounds quite a lot as well.
Oh dear. Brilliant.
Yeah, leave that off. Yeah, no, sorry, I wasn't there.
It might not have been 4, but I think it was way more than what I had in my head. It was, that's for sure. And my 3-point percent was like 28% or something. And again in my head, I was like, I'm sure that was 38%. So I might just, yeah.
But none of those players have got a tennis championship ring.
Exactly. There you go.
They don't have that.
So you need to put that stat in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the Dave Owen website.
Yeah, and the door thing reminded me of the when we heard about the shoe getting thrown on the court. Who threw the shoe on the court? I can't remember.
That was a Dan Lloyd story.
Oh, it was, wasn't it? Just trying to distract someone, and they just got a shoe and threw it on the court.
That was a coach. That was a coach threw the shoe at the referee.
Really?
Yeah, I might use that one day.
Just object on the court. It waste some time, interrupts the flow of play. Anything.
Whatever it takes, guys. Yeah, whatever it takes.
Well, Matt, look, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you guys, and thanks for all the work you're doing promoting basketball. It's great to listen to these podcasts. It's really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's an absolute honour that you've come on, and look, we're all going to be keeping an eye in a couple of weeks for the GB Masters over 40s.
Oh yeah.
the GB Lions and see how they do. Yeah, all best of luck with that.
Thanks very much. I'll keep you posted how we get on.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
keep a beer score.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So ends another episode. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it, and we really appreciate Matt's time and all the guests we ever had on. If you haven't listened to some of our guests, go back and check them out. We've got about 114 episodes out at the moment, and we've got plenty of guests lined up coming up in the future. Isn't that right, Paul?
We do. But today we have had Matt Shaw, one of the UK's highest rated coaches, just won the NBL Div 1 with the Derby Trailblazers, and he's got head coach awards from England under-17s, NBL, EABL, and the list goes on. So thank you very much, Matt, for joining us today.
Pleasure, guys. Really loved it.